This is the Bill Press Show.
Officer, were you the one who arrested me? Gonna shake my hand? So I got invited to host a vigil called Carry the Names. And that's what they were doing, carrying the names of the people who were victims of deadly police force. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley. I got a motion from Dragonfly from Stop Shopping Choir, and I started preaching. I preached up a storm as best I could, but about a minute and a half into my sermon, the place was flooded with police, Homeland Security, National Guard, state troopers, and I was pushed over and handcuffed so fast, down in the jail, down in the basement. Before you know it, I was out the door, put in prison overnight. The next morning, I'm in court. The same thing happens. I'm just rushed out of there. Then our lawyer, Wiley Steckler, gives me this iPhone. And there, in black and white, in the Gothamist, a popular paper, is this charge by Adam Lisberg, the MTA law enforcement spokesperson for this grand place. His quote is that I, Reverend Billy, physically attacked a police officer. Unbelievable. The feeling of being robbed of my work and life and identity, the fiction. I did not touch anybody. I did not look, I know how to do this. I'm trained in nonviolence. I did not do anything. It was right here. It was right here. It happened right here. I was simply arrested while I was speaking and taken away, and that's it. The cold feeling in my city, the city that I love, that city spokespersons whose salary I pay for with my taxes, that they would say this. I could just feel the rending apart of the community, that we are not that close. We're not. They are willing to say this, and they think that they can just say anything about anybody and get away with it. So we have something in the Church of Stop Shopping called radical forgiveness. Amen?
Cops and bankers love their children.
I forgive the police.
We gotta love them too. Cops and bankers love their mothers.
But I'll stay radical.
Mothers love their brothers. We gotta love them.
But we'll wake up every morning forgiving each other, reaching out, touching, telling stories, having humor, being in a community, sharing our children, sharing the streets, sharing the climate, city together. Forgiving each other. Helping each other out. Living together. Living.
What do we do in the superstore? What do we do with the blood and the gore? The water's rising through our door. Love our children too. Love our children too.
Amen. Earth-alleluia.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is the Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show for this Friday, July 17th, 2015. Igor Volsky of Think Progress here for Bill Press. We continue with, of course, the news of the day, the shooting yesterday in Chattanooga, Tennessee. 4 Marines dead at 2 military facilities, and the gunman shot by police, killed there on the spot. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377 if you want to be part of the conversation. Also, of course, we're on Twitter at BP Show if you want to weigh in that way. I'm on Twitter at Igor Volsky, and I'm also periscoping on Periscope as Igor Volsky. You can, I should say, you can watch us on Periscope. You can watch us on YouTube /TawkrTV. You got it. TAWKR TV.
You got it.
We're there for you, and of course on your local progressive radio station, on your iHeartRadio app, or on the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel. So many ways to find us, so many ways to listen and watch, and of course we want to hear from you. Mary from Ouray, Colorado. Mary, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I live in beautiful Ouray. I've been reading this book called Taking Liberties, Why Religious Freedom Doesn't Give You the Right to Tell Other People What to Do. And talking about hate, it doesn't have to just involve guns. It can involve legislation that attacks, say, like Planned Parenthood or abortion clinics or voting rights or gay and lesbian issues. All that kind of thing, or just attacking the people's right to vote. This is kind of a form of hate. Maybe that's not the correct word to use, but in a way it doesn't always have to be guns. Hate can result in legislation that takes away liberties because of maybe some wrong right-wing interpretation of the Bible or whatever. I don't know if there's any credence in that.
Yeah, it's a broad umbrella of hate. You can hate a lot of things. You can have deep emotions about lots of different things. The question is, how do you act on those emotions? What do you do? And of course, the problem becomes, and the problems we've faced in this society on a level that's far above other developed nations, is gun violence. When people, again, react to that hate by taking a gun and shooting somebody. And I'll tell you, you got to stop the hate. You got to stop the hate. The response we saw in this country after the Charleston, South Carolina response from the and throughout the country to recognize, to realize, and for it was one of those rare moments when politicians also recognized and realized that we're not going to perpetrate the hate any longer. We're going to tear down the flag. We're going to begin to have a conversation about what drives racial hatred, what's still behind it, even in to have it in this situation as well. And that's my fear. The previous caller talked about how will this be politicized? How will this enter the political conversation? And I said that given the candidates on the right running for president, it ain't going to be pretty. His name, the shooter's name, is going to be kind of waved around as an excuse to crack down on certain communities, maybe to restrict travel to certain parts of the country. And that's going to be wrong because that perpetuates a form of hate. That perpetuates a form of isolation of the other. And that, frankly, very neatly fits into the propaganda of terrorist organizations who say to Muslims all over the world that you don't belong, that these people don't want you. Western culture doesn't want you. You have to submit your life and your being to Allah. So we have to be rational. If there are steps we can take to make these military installations more safe, the bulletproof glass, the more military police, closing the terror gap in our background check system so that people on terrorist watch lists, not that this guy was, but so that they can't get a gun. Those are all good ideas. Those are all good policy debates. Figuring out why he did this. Did he slip through the crack of some mental health system that he was supposed to be a part of and he wasn't? Those are all good reactions. But when you start hearing people moving from the focus on the individual or the individuals that immediately surrounded him or motivated him, be that somebody in his community or somebody overseas who he connected through with social media, when they start going beyond that and moving to larger groups of people, that's when the problems begin. That's when you move away from solving the local issues that drove this one person, and you start maligning entire communities, and that does nothing to keep you safe. In fact, that does the very, very opposite. And I bet that when you tune into other radio shows and other dials and other stations this morning, this afternoon, and in drive time, you'll hear them rail against this name, rail against the people who hold this name, and pretend that this somehow makes them tough. That kind of approach prevents attacks, makes you safer, and it doesn't. It does not. You saw what happened after we took very strong, decisive action in Iraq. It doesn't help. Gene from Cleveland, Ohio, welcome to the program.
Yes, these acts of hate, that people with these guns and do these hateful things, that's acts of cowardism. But the only way that guy would ever be brave is to have a gun. Say with these NRA nuts, the only way that they feel brave is to have a gun. I was in the Army 3 years. When I got out, I had to carry a gun for 3 years. When I got out, that was the last time I carried a gun. That was the last time I ever shot a gun. It just seems like we got all these cowards with guns, and they're just shooting up too many people. Look how many people are dying in this country because of guns. How many people are getting wounded?
Yeah, an astronomical amount. Way too many. An astronomical amount. Hey, look, I have no real problem with responsible gun owners who want to go hunt, who want to go, shooting as a sport. That's fine. That's okay. You can have a gun to do that, as long as you lock it up responsibly, as long as you have the technologies necessary so that your kid doesn't get it, because that happens way too much in this country, and as long as only the responsible among you have guns. And that's where you need the extension of the background check system, plugging the various loopholes that exist within it. So we got to do something about this. Whether or not it will happen, whether or not this particular incident will drive any kind of real change, I'm skeptical. I'm doubtful. And I wonder how, when events like this happen, when you see over Twitter, over cable news that there's been another shooting, all of us collectively in the news media, at least where I work and Think Progress, go, oh, because we go through the familiar dance of setting up a short post based on the details we now have, publishing that post, then expanding it as the news conferences come in and more details come to light. And it's so familiar, it's second nature. And that's depressing, that we go into this routine, into this dance, into this waltz as news organizations across the country where we know exactly how to report on these instances because it's a template. We've done it so many times. We know what the second day post is. Where did this person get a gun? We know what the third day story is. Who's offering the legislation to try to plug the issues here? We know what the fourth day post is. Who's the crazy nutcase that's going to go on a certain television or radio show and scream about how you just need more guns and all of this would go away? It's all too familiar. We know it so well. And I wonder, how do the people who are standing in the place of any kind of reform, people and organizations like the NRA, how do they react to something like this? When they see a shooting, what do they do? It's familiar to them as well. It happens so much. They know they're going to be targeted in some way, called out for failing, for for really standing in the way of any kind of gun reform that most Americans support. So what do they do? How do they respond? What's their waltz? What's their dance? They stay silent for a few days and then they say something about how more guns is less crime and the only thing preventing a guy with a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun or something like that. And the cycle continues, and we continue until the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Yeah, it's a familiar dance here in America. And it's sad. It's sad, sad, sad for us all. And it's depressing. And it has to end. It really does. Now, look, if nothing happened after Newtown, if after 26 kids got gunned down, and we as a country were horrified, and support for gun legislation was through the roof, 80%, higher than that, and we did nothing? We couldn't get a compromise bill stretching out the existing background check system a little bit tighter on gun sales? If we couldn't address it then, will we be able to address it now? Blake from Kansas, what do you think?
Well, I think equating hate and mental illness isn't fair to people that are suffering from a mental illness.
I don't think I was. I said that in some instances, if people have intense feelings of hate, that maybe that's rooted in something else. I didn't say people with mental illness are hateful or have hate.
I'm talking about the show earlier in the show.
Yeah, I think people who have deep feelings of hate, of paranoia, of whatever else, in some cases, those are just maybe feelings they have that they don't know how to deal with properly, that they can't channel properly, that they haven't been able to talk through with anybody properly. And so maybe they need some kind of assistance in one way or another to deal with that in a more civilized channel. But I'm not saying that people with mental illness have hate. I'm not equating mental illness with hate. No. I'm saying that the people who shoot up schools or churches or military facilities in this country, that there's something going on with those people. And if it's hate, okay. But it's not normal. It's not normal behavior. It's not its normal exhaustion of feelings. And that needs to be dealt with, along with everything else. All right, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. I'm Igor Volsky here on the Bill Press Show. We want to hear more from you as we continue to talk about the shooting yesterday in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
15 minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show. Igor Volsky here of Think Progress in for Bill Press as we switch gears a little bit from the shooting in Chattanooga to the other big news of the week. Of course, the president's Iran deal, a historic deal reached with Iran to contain that nation's nuclear program. And there's no better man I can think of to discuss the deal, how it's perceived in the world, and how it's going to play out than my former colleague and old friend, Ali Gharib, contributor to The Nation at thenation.com, on Twitter at Ali_Gharib. Ali, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Igor. It's great to talk to you, man.
Listen, everyone needs to go on The Nation and read your piece on this because you're an Iranian American. You were able to contextualize this deal in a way that I really haven't seen others do. Let's just quickly kind of start with the history of all this because you're right. Hey, 2 years ago when Ahmadinejad was in power in Iran, and we were writing articles about there's a 50-50 chance that the United States would go to war with Iran. Nobody could have thought that we would be standing here today facing a day where, hey, it's possible that we're going to be able to dramatically reduce the nuclear materials that Iran has, to cap that program, and to kind of move this whole issue that we've been facing for decades off the table. How did this happen? That 2 years ago, no way, and today it's a real, true possibility.
It's a testament, to the Obama administration's persistence in it, and also to, the political shifts that Iran underwent. A lot of people, that 2 years ago period was 25 months ago that Rouhani was elected, and he took office in August, so 23 months ago. And that was just like a drastic change in Iranian politics. This is something that a lot of the hawks in Washington, a lot of people that favor regime change, their arguments are dependent on saying that Iran has no internal politics, that it doesn't matter who the president is. But clearly it does. You can say until you're blue in the face that Khamenei makes all the real decisions, the Iran supreme leader. But, at the end of the day, you're right, that the nuclear stockpiles are going to be reduced. The enrichment is going to be capped. The levels of centrifuges that they have are going to be reduced. And a lot of these things have already happened with the Geneva deal that was signed in November 2013. So we're talking about real concrete reductions here that have resulted from this political change. It's real. If you keep denying it, you're just living in an ideologue's world.
Ali, we're very short on time, but I want to ask you, I think the key criticism here is empowering Iran, lifting sanctions, allows that nation to kind of sweep across the region, destabilize the region, fund terror groups. The question being, why are we empowering a nation with sanction relief that does so much nefarious activity throughout the world? How would you respond to that critique?
Well, there's no question that Iran is a bad actor in many ways in the region. But the reason we're doing it is because, as the Hawks themselves have been saying for a dozen years, the threat of an Iranian nuclear weapon is a grave threat. I mean, that was a major threat that was facing us. The fact of the matter is, yes, Iran may have some extra cash for its adventurous foreign policy positions that it undertakes, but you know what? They were funding this stuff anyway, and the influx of cash isn't going to make a huge difference, perhaps at the margins. A lot of that money, though, could be spent at home, which a lot of people think is likely, including myself. And by improving the Iranian economy, economic prosperity a lot of times leads to moderation, and we're hoping that that's what's going to happen in Iran.
All right, Ali, contributor for The Nation. I'm so sorry. We're up against the hard break. We have to go, but thank you so much. It was so good to hear from you, to get real context, real perspective on the Iran deal. All right, 54 minutes after the hour. I'm Igor Volsky here for Bill Press. We'll be back right after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans, because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
58 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show for this Friday, July 17th, 2015. We're moving into the second hour here. And the other news of the week that we just got to get to is Greece. because I want to know how it's possible that the people of Greece rejected austerity 2 weeks ago, and now it's being shoved down their throat by the elected leaders of Europe and their own prime minister. What happened? What? More austerity? That's next on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people had lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or wherever. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished when they incarcerate their children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
Ad Council.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning, and welcome to Hour 2 of The Bill Press Show for this Friday, July 17th, 2015. A very happy Friday to you all. We've reached the end of a long, adventurous, news-filled week here in America and around the world. And of course, there's no better place to catch up on everything that's happened than here around our Bill Press R-shaped, what is this? What, like V-shaped table?
It's a V-shape.
Our V-shaped table.
A soft V.
That's right.
A rounded corner.
Where we congregate every single weekday from 6 to 9 a.m. to tell you how it is.
Can I talk to you about something?
Yes.
So you're periscoping.
I'm periscoping.
Part of the program as well.
Yes.
You've got it fixed on your
on myself,
on
of
your
course.
Profile. Where else would it be?
Where else would it be?
I noticed you used a different phone there, Igor, than the one that you were using the last time I saw you.
That's right.
Isn't that curious?
You know, I for quite some time had an iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
But then I thought, I want a different interface on my phone. I've had an iPhone for so many years. I want to try something different. I've heard okay things about this Android. My landlord had gotten a big Note 3. And I said, oh, so it's before this size came out on iPhone. And I said, oh, how nice. How big. I actually said, Peter, when I go to do Bill Press every Tuesday morning, it'd be nice if I had a bigger phone so I could read the news more easily. I could do show research.
Yeah.
Write that phone off is what I did.
I said, I think you'll be back. I said, I think you're going to get
predicted it.
I said, I think you're going to get an iPhone.
Yeah. And here I am. This weekend, I said, I can't take it anymore. I can't take the stupid bugs on my Droid. I can't take the stupid battery life. I can't take the stupid design. I'm coming back. And here I am in the Apple family.
I knew you'd be back. Look, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're always welcome here, Igor.
My iPhone. I told you you'd be back, and here you are.
Well, look, I'm all about admitting when you're wrong, admitting a mistake. Listen, I understand. I should have known better, though. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Here, of course, with Peter Ogbert, Elisa Murphy, Cyprian Bolding, and Sarah Dietrich. She's taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS. We're going to turn in a moment to the situation in Greece. Because, listen, it's not getting any better for them, and I don't think it's been solved or it's not the end of the story, because those guys over there are getting more austerity whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
They voted against it. It's back. It's being shoved down their throats. Even while economists are saying this isn't going to grow their economy, this isn't going to increase spending, this isn't going to get them out of the hole they're in, may even dig them deeper if you increase taxes on people, if you reduce pensions. But look, it's what I guess the European Union wants, it's what the banks wants, and it's what Greece ultimately is going to get. We're going to get to that, but first, we have Peter with our Full Court Press.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. All right, Igor. So scientists have discovered a brand new dinosaur. It's an ancestor of the Velociraptor. It is a large winged dinosaur, about 6 foot 6 inches tall, and they're saying that this dinosaur was on the cusp of becoming a bird.
Almost there.
Right? Like, this is the link one of the links they've been looking for, because for years we've heard that dinosaurs really look like more like birds than the big lizards that we associate them with. A lot of them probably had feathers and things like that. So this is actually a large velociraptor looking dinosaur that could take flight, in case you didn't already have scary enough nightmares. It couldn't fly for long. Think of like a chicken, right? You just sort of take off and scurry. But it did have feathers, and it did look like more of like a velociraptor. I'm not even going to try and tell you what it's called, because it was found in China, named after the province that it was found in. It was preserved quite well, actually, in limestone, thanks to a volcanic eruption that had it buried in northeast China. So one of the links that we were looking for to connect dinosaurs to birds.
It's a sad day for creationists.
Yeah, it is. It's a very, very sad day for creationists. You know, Elizabeth Warren just recently celebrated her anniversary. She put a little picture up on Facebook. It was her 35th wedding anniversary for the senator and her husband. And she put a photo up, and she let slip a little interesting detail. She says, quote, "I was a single mom with 2 little kids, and I just started teaching law in Houston. And then I met this guy from Massachusetts named Bruce. I was completely crazy about him, and I still am. When I proposed to him, he said yes." End quote. So there you go, Elizabeth Warren getting things done, not just in the Senate, but she proposed to her husband. They've been happily married for 35 years. So
hey, good for her. I proposed to my husband as well, so we have something in common.
There you
Elizabeth.
go. You take control of the situation.
I saw her yesterday. I didn't get a chance to talk to her, but I saw her. She was sitting right next to me. And if I had a chance, I was going to say 2 things. I was going to say, hey, my husband went to HLS, and if I would have known about the proposal, I would have been like, and I proposed to him.
There you go.
So much in
common. There you go. You have that in common. And finally, the Washington, D.C. State Fair is coming up. And, you know, like any good state fair, they have a lot of different contests about who has the best cake or who has the best pie and who can grow the best pumpkin or squash or whatever. But they have a new category in Washington, D.C. It's going to be the best bud. They are going to have a marijuana growing competition to see who can grow the best marijuana strain at the D.C. State Fair, because, as you know, it is legal to grow and have here in the District of Columbia. They're going to take a look at appearance, whether or not it's well manicured. They're going to take a smell at the odor. Does it have a sweet, spicy, or murky smell?
Very important factors.
Is it sticky? They're going to feel it. Is it sticky? Does the stem snap or bend? And then they're going to talk about how they grew the plant. Is it organic? Did you use artificial light, natural light, a combination? Well, what's your story to grow your pumpkin?
I'm going to need time, date, and directions to the D.C.
Because
Fair.
you are a journalist.
Thank you, yes. Moving on, though, to a place where they wish they had some legal pot, I'm sure, at this point. We're talking, of course, about Greece. And the latest that the Greek government has accepted the terms laid out by their European creditors. They're gonna go ahead and implement more austerity after the Greek people roundly rejected less stringent proposals in a national referendum just several weeks ago. We're joined now by Ryan Heath. He's the senior EU correspondent and associate editor for Politico Europe. Ryan joins us now from Brussels. Ryan, thank you for being with us. And to me, this story is fascinating in that we were all talking just a couple of weeks ago trying to predict how the Greek people would vote. Will they say yes? Will they say no to a deal that includes austerity measures? They overwhelmingly said no. The prime minister of that country said, well, great, this is really going to strengthen my hand. I'm going to be able to come back to the European creditors and say, look, my people aren't for this. Let's make a better deal. And just the opposite happened. The people voted one way. The European folks said, we don't care. You're getting more of the same medicine we've given you for years, even though it hasn't worked. What's going on? How could it be that after a vote that said no to austerity, the Greeks are now getting even more austerity?
There are just so many layers here. It feels like a wedding cake to me, this story. Every time you think you've gotten to the bottom of it, it just keeps coming. The answer is actually relatively simple. So people voted against austerity, but at the end of the day, their banks are closed and they'd like the banks to open. So Alexis Tsipras, the prime minister, has actually been quite clever here. So he has said, yes, we'll go through this extra, I guess in US dollars, it's about 20 billion worth of reforms, but he's going to get 100 billion on the table. So he's doing a 5-for-1 trade, actually. So for every extra dollar of reform or austerity that he's agreed to, he's going to get 5 back if the deal works. Because the secret second layer to all of this is that I think no one believes the deal is going to work.
Well, so that's my question.
The international...
Yeah, how do you have this great divide between economists all over the world, including the International Monetary Fund, saying austerity is not going to grow the Greek economy? So you have economists on one side, and then politicians led by Germany on the other, screaming, what you need is more austerity. Why don't they listen to the economists?
Well, I think there's a little lost in translation in those discussions, because the middle ingredient between the two, which is just pump in more stimulus or be austere, is that there need to be structural reforms to the Greek economy. Basically, their tax system is broke. They don't collect the taxes, the elite evade the taxes. There are discounts for the islands, which are full of the people who are most able to pay taxes. The pension system was designed at a time when people died a lot earlier, basically. So people didn't realize these bills would keep mounting and mounting and mounting. And it's gotten to the point where Greece has been through this so many times. Now the creditors just say, well, we're never getting our money back. So it's nice that you don't want austerity. We feel your pain, but don't expect us to foot the bill. So they're in this huge standoff right now where there's just so much space between the two of them. It's hard to see how they'll come together. And I think you're right. Virtually every economist agrees this debt isn't going to get paid back. So no one is quite sure whether Greece really will go through with these reforms, but they don't really have the chance to do it unless some of the debt gets written off. And that's kind of this moral conundrum where the people who feel they've been burnt before in Europe don't want to give any more. Yet if they don't give more, they'll never get the thing they actually do want. So it's this great twisting moral story that is just going to keep twisting and spinning around for weeks yet, I think.
Ooh, well, the divide is quite real. The Greek parliamentary speaker called the deal, quote, social genocide for the Greek people.
Wow.
How is it that this government, that this prime minister could remain in power given that his own party's so divided?
That's a big question. He might not be in power in a month's time. So essentially, he doesn't have a majority in the parliament anymore if his own party keeps rebelling against him, and he doesn't have the votes of the opposition. So he's gone from relying on 162 out of 300 in the parliament down to about 135 now. The way he got through this vote on the deal was all of the opposition parties voted for the deal as well, or except for the communists. But he can't rely on those votes on a day-to-day basis. So we might find that there'll be elections in the fall, basically, where Alexis Tsipras might get the deal he promised to campaign against and then lose office as a result of having done so. But then we're in an even bigger mess because all of those other parties in opposition, they're the ones who got thrown out for being corrupt and for bringing in the first rounds of austerity. So it's just going to be a mess whichever way we turn, and I think that's why you've got a lot of people now just taking a deep breath, just thinking, hang on, whatever we do is a bad option, so let's not rush into the first bad option that we see. And you're going to see weeks of this debate around this deal now, and a lot of leaders covering their backsides because even the ones who supported the deal think it could go wrong. So you saw France going to its parliament and getting a vote on behalf of the deal, for example, and they were the cheerleaders for it. So they must be worried if that's happening.
Man, profiles encourage all of them over there. If I'm challenging this government, if I'm in the opposition party, what's my alternative? I mean, it seems like ultimately at the end of the day, this is the best deal, or at least the only deal that I could get from the Europeans. So if I'm against this deal as a Greek politician, as a Greek lawmaker, I'm going to vote against it. Do I need to present a viable alternative to how I'm going to solve this crisis? What do I say to the Greek people? What's the solution of the Greeks who are against these austerity measures?
I think it falls into two camps. You've got the Greeks who are ignored, and they were the ones who saw the problems mounting, who argued for labour market reforms, who argued for capping the pensions years ago, and essentially that was going to cause too much political pain at the time, so they just got pushed aside. So they're the real minority. And then the larger faction of the anti-austerity group are the people who say, let's give Europe a bloody nose, we're not going to stand for this anymore, we're going to stand on our Greek pride alone. But at the end of the day, I guess that only takes you so far when your banks are closed. So it basically boils down to two options. Either Greece can leave the euro and there might be some catastrophic short-term costs, and you might literally see food packages being airdropped into Greece, that sort of scenario. But in the long term, they might be able to become more competitive by having more control over their currency, by being able to devalue in the way that, Argentina did when it was having its problems.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say lots of uncertainty in the way you describe it. No one really knows how this is going to play out as we move forward. The German finance minister, even though they reached this deal, the German finance minister still saying that maybe Greece should take a time out from the Eurozone. What does that mean, a time out?
Well, we don't know whether that's possible, but it is certainly backed by a number of other economists. So I first heard people from the World Bank put that to me in April, and everyone thought I was crazy when I mentioned that, sort of not in print, but just in private conversations. And then I heard people yesterday at a very respected think tank in London tell me the exact same thing, which is that somehow you try and preserve the political symbolism and the unity of the Eurozone by not formally throwing Greece out, but you try and get their economy back on track by printing a separate currency. So essentially you have the two currencies in parallel. So ordinary Greeks live their lives via a drachma, if that comes back in, but a lot of official transactions, and officially Greece remains in the Eurozone. So I think that's quite unprecedented if it does go down that route. And the really big risk is that it becomes a farce where, officially Greece stays in, but everyone knows they're out and they don't do enough to get their economy back on track. And then they sort of slide into becoming, if not a third world country, certainly out of that league of advanced economies.
All right, Ryan Heath, senior EU correspondent and associate editor for Politico Europe. Thank you so much for your insight. It's a story we're going to continue watching because, as you point out, it's not coming to a close anytime soon. 22 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show continues right after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. Oh, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
This is the Bill Press Show.
27 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show continues. We've done Iran, we've done Greece, we've done Chattanooga, Tennessee, where, of course, that story's still developing. And I look over on the TV screens to my right. Donald Trump is weighing in. Mike Huckabee is weighing in. There was one other presidential candidate. Chris Christie was on CNN.
So you got Huckabee on Fox, Christie on CNN, and Trump on MS.
So I am sure we're having a great and reasonable conversation about everything that went down and what we need to do to kind of address it and move forward. We're in good hands. We're in good hands there, Peter. But we're going to switch gears in a bit here because, you know, I am not a big science guy. I am not someone who likes science fiction movies or ever did well in science class, for that matter, in school. And so, planets, but I have to say These latest Pluto pictures, they have the whole world, they have the whole country, they even have me, someone who doesn't care about science, being like, ooh, is that a heart?
Yeah.
Ice? What? All right, we're going to talk to Joe Cassidy, Executive Director of Space, about Pluto next on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws. How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
CrimAdvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
CrimAdvisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada. What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry for guns.
I understand that CrimAdvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but what about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow. CrimAdvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
CrimAdvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now. Ban fracking now. Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour of The Bill Press Show. Friday, July 17th, 2015, all the news of the week. We're reviewing as we head into the weekend, and it'd be incomplete, Peter, if we didn't discuss the most beautiful and amazing pictures the week, the month, man, I'd even say the year has produced.
Yeah.
And
Fascinating.
those are, of course, the images we're seeing coming from Pluto. For the first time, really getting a sense of what that not quite planet looks like. We're joined in the studio by Joe Cassidy, Executive Director of Space at Aerojet Rocketdyne.
Rocketdyne.
There we go. And if you have questions for Joe about Pluto, about what we're seeing, about the information that scientists are now receiving about that not quite planet, you can call us 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Joe, take us back to the day years ago, almost 10 years ago now, where scientists decided we're going to send this rocket thing up into space. It's going to take all this time. It's going to get near Pluto and send us pictures. How does somebody even get the idea to do that? And how was that decision made?
So it even goes back further than that, actually, Igor. It was back in around 1990. There was a group that really wanted... I don't know if you remember, the Postal Service put out a series of stamps of all the planets that we had explored with the images from the Voyager. And there was one in there for Pluto, and it just at the bottom said, "Not yet explored." So it was a huge motivation for these guys. We got to get something out there, you know. And actually, another thing I heard the other day was that John F. Kennedy, in one of his speeches back, launching the moon program, said, we're going to do this, we're going to the moon and out to the edge of the solar system. So there was sort of this holdover that we still hadn't checked that box off yet.
So discovered in 1930, is that right?
Yeah, by a young 24-year-old, just out of I'm not even sure where, if he'd even finished college yet, but he was out in Lowell Observatory in Arizona, and looking at some photographic plates, saw this thing, sort of didn't look like it was staying still like a star should, and said, I think that's a planet maybe. And his children were there the other day with us at APL when we started receiving the pictures back. And his ashes, a small amount of his ashes actually flew on the spacecraft.
I saw that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Very cool.
So he got to get up close and personal.
Clyde Tombaugh. Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool.
866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. If you want to go to Pluto, Joe will take you. Just give us a call.
The thing that blows my mind about this project is when you look at the side-by-side photos of the best pictures we had of Pluto before this and what we have now.
We didn't know how bad the pictures were.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They're amazing. They're amazing quality.
Yeah.
So how close did we get to Pluto this time?
Let's see. We were a little closer than we thought we were going to be. We were inside 7,500 kilometers. So, that's pretty close. When you're talking about the whole distance out there, we were like 3.3 billion some odd miles that we went. And we figured it out the other day. I think the mission cost was about $750 million. And we did the math and we said that's like about 24 cents a mile.
Wow.
Yeah.
Someone actually
I would take that. That's a good deal.
Someone actually put out the story. The Minnesota Vikings are getting a new NFL stadium.
Yes.
That is going to cost more
than that mission?
Than this mission. This entire mission
there
to
you
get
go. That
to
puts
Pluto.
it in perspective.
That really puts it into perspective.
So, Joe, what did we know about Pluto before we started getting these pictures back? And certainly we're learning things. We're going to be learning things for quite some time. But what do we know today?
Okay, so we had, in the meantime, we launched, as you said, and it was going to take us almost 10 years to get there. We had the Hubble Space Telescope, which was launched in 1990, and began doing imaging of things like Pluto, distant objects, as well as obviously all the beautiful pictures of nebula and galaxies and things that it's taken over the years. But among the things that we discovered was that Pluto actually had a moon called Charon. And so we knew that it was sort of this binary planet, because the moon is relative to the size of Pluto, almost, pretty close to the same size. So it's almost like a double planet. And then along the way, we also determined there were a few other little moons. So we knew they were there, but we really didn't know very much about what they looked like. And I think that's the thing now that the planetary geologists and folks like that are really excited about, is we're seeing details of the geology. And there's all these theories like, doesn't have a lot of craters. It's got mountains of ice.
What does that mean, mountains of ice?
It's so cold that the ice is like bedrock.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's 11,000 foot high mountains of ice, if you can imagine that. And then, but no craters. So craters are an indication that, the thing doesn't basically recycle its surface. Like on Earth, we have an active, plate tectonics and volcanoes and wind erosion. So our surface
does not happen on Pluto.
Yeah, and you wouldn't expect that on Pluto. So people are saying, okay, why are there no craters then? Because all the other planets that are out there like that and small bodies have these craters. So they're trying to figure out what's the geology that's causing it. So it's either a really new surface or it's got some other activity, internal heating or something that's causing it to recycle its surface.
Okay, well, good news. If it has mountains of ice, that means there's no global warming. So that's good to know.
Definitely not on Pluto.
I understand. Okay, so that's one less problem.
Climate change, not a problem.
Not a problem.
They'd probably welcome that on Pluto.
I can't wait for those folks to start talking about the fact that we found ice on Pluto. Climate change isn't real.
That's right.
That's
That's
ice
right.
somewhere. It's
I'm
cold
no
somewhere.
scientist,
But yeah, exactly. Seeing these pictures. And what does the heart symbolize? We all saw that very compelling picture.
So this is the classic thing that we do as humans. People see things. I don't know if you remember.
Pluto loves me.
Yeah. There was the face on Mars that a few years back. The old man in the mountain up in New Hampshire fell eventually. But, we look at things like rock formations and we anthropomorphize them or whatever. That's not the right word, but we see faces, we see shapes. We look at clouds and we see things, right? So when we got those first images back, there's this light-colored region, and it's sort of heart-shaped, and we say, oh, it's the heart. And then there was a dark-colored region that sort of looked like a whale, so there's the heart and the whale. And then the really funny thing I saw the other day on the internet was somebody took that heart shape, and if you looked at it, it was a little longer on one side than the other, and they said, this looks like Pluto, the dog from the Disney movie.
Oh, wow.
And they started superimposing the Pluto face on there.
Oh, no.
So it was very appropriate.
Well, I expect to see it in Valentine's cards all across the country.
That's right.
Oh, patented. That idea has already been. I'm producing them. Mass printing those cards.
I'm trying to think of what catchphrase would work. But,
Volsky Printing.
Right.
Incorporated.
Right.
The other question, and for me, this has always been something I have been wondering about, and I know the space program certainly has done a lot of good for us here on Earth. It has a lot of political support. Even people like Newt Gingrich, big proponent of the space program, lest we forget. Yeah. Talk to us about some of the benefits that we see down here on Earth from taking explorations like this. What do we learn? How does it help us?
Sure. Well, obviously, doing something like this requires a tremendous amount of precision, engineering know-how, camera technology. And you take a look at the kinds of things that we put into a mission like that and flip it around, and now you're seeing an explosion of new imaging satellites to help us understand our planet better, like Skybox, Planet Labs, all these kind of guys are out there in Silicon Valley launching these new companies. And that basically turns that around, looks down at the Earth. We can do better farming. We can do better water management, just a ton of stuff like that we're able, with the same technology that we use to go explore the planets, to turn it around and look down at Earth and improve our lives here on Earth.
So many reasons to love Pluto. It loves you. We love it. Joe Cassidy, Executive Director of Space at Aerojet Rocketdyne. He's going to sit tight, talk to us more about the not-quite planet Pluto, what we're learning, how it can help us, right here on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
This is why you took a second job. Why you taught yourself how to fix the plumbing. Why you'll do whatever it takes to keep your home. And that is why we want to help. We are making home affordable, a free government resource that can make paying the mortgage easier. Call 888-995-HOPE today.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
46 minutes after the hour, we're continuing here with Joe Cassidy, Executive Director of Space at Aerojet Rocketdyne, discussing, of course, the beautiful Pluto. It loves us. We love it for all of the technologies that we're developing based on space exploration, farming, water management, lots of different tools that we have because we were in space. Frank from Chicago, Illinois has a question about Pluto. Frank, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Joe, I'm just curious, after the flyby, what's next for New Horizons? Is it heading on out beyond the bubble like the Voyagers, or is it just going to orbit out there?
Yeah, so we couldn't slow down enough to go into orbit around Pluto. That would take a lot more propellant and weight than we were able to budget for this mission. So it's going on. There is a proposal that will go out from the same team that led the investigation of Pluto to target another thing out there called a Kuiper Belt object, or a KBO. So out past Pluto, there's a whole lot more of these sort of small icy bodies that we figured out. That was another thing, in the Hubble era that we figured out there are a lot more things out there in the edge of the solar system. And so they're going to see if they might be able to go ahead and target another one of those just to get a little more data out of this. It's an investment. We've got it out there. Doesn't cost that much more now to just keep.
Why stop now?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep going.
Right.
What's the limit, I guess, of something like this? At what point are we going to? Is this project going to run its course?
Yeah, so it probably is propellant. At some point, we have a set of thrusters on there, 12 little engines that puff out, just like basically if you puff your cheeks up and blow a little air out, that's about as much thrust as they're putting out.
Okay.
But they point the spacecraft for the science to take those images, and they also keep it directed on the course it's going to fly. Once you run out of propellant, and I guess the other thing is power. It has a little radioisotope generator on there that's kind of like the Mr. Fusion in Back to the Future.
Yes.
Generates the power that runs the spacecraft.
You just made me so happy.
Peter's going to go home and watch that movie.
Yeah, no.
Just like Pluto. Robert Wisniewski from Twitter asked about the ambient temperature on Pluto. You said it was about negative 200, negative 273.
Yeah, to 300-ish. I'd have
Pretty
to get,
cold. He tweeted, "I better take a coat."
Right.
Yeah, more than that.
Cold enough
Maybe a
that the
scarf.
mountains of ice, the 11,000-foot high mountains of ice, are like bedrock. That's the quote I saw yesterday from one of the scientists, is the ice is like the bedrock of Pluto. So it's very, very cold.
Joe, now let me ask you, Pluto, when you and I were in school, not together, separately,
Yes.
we were taught that Pluto was a planet.
That's right.
Now, it's no longer a planet. It
was demoted.
Demoted. Why? When will it join the other 8?
Yes, right. So there's a strict set of rules, apparently, that the International Astronomical Union applies to the definition of a planet. And the best thing I could say is it's a technicality. It was voted out on a technicality. We've discovered a lot of these other similar things out there, as I said. And if the way I heard it explained by one of the astronomers, if we let Pluto be a planet, we'd have something like 53 planets in the solar system.
Okay.
So,
wow.
So
That's
it's
fine.
sort of like,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That would make school a lot harder.
Hey, listen,
yeah, that's a really
it's
tough
too
thing
easy
to
now, I
memorize
think.
for kids.
I'm starting a change.org petition. You heard it here first, to make Pluto a planet.
There we
Join
go.
me in this cause.
Yes. If you go to the planetarium where Tom Bowell discovered Pluto, they sell T-shirts that say "Pluto demands a recount."
Exactly. Exactly. It doesn't want to be demoted. It's
Nice.
giving us all this information, and what else can we do for it? Come
Yeah.
on, at least give it
At
the
least.
respect it deserves. Anyway, petition
I'm
at
with you.
BillPressShow.com, right? Is that
Let's
the
do it.
So
Yeah,
let's do it.
absolutely.
Hey, Joe, can I
Yes.
ask you a question? What does this mean in terms of Mars for that space
yeah.
exploration?
Well, obviously, the interest, I think, that's been generated by this is good for space exploration in general. And, we're sending, it took us 10 years to get out there to Pluto. Every 2 years, we send something to Mars. We or our international partners. India, just a couple of years ago, sent a spacecraft to Mars and is now in orbit. So we have something like, I'll say, a half dozen spacecraft orbiting Mars. Obviously, most people know we have 2 rovers active on Mars. We had 3. Poor Spirit got stuck and is now, sitting still. But
Still grieving.
Opportunity and Curiosity are still roving around on Mars. And we're learning more and more about just all the interesting stuff on Mars, like the plentiful amounts of water that are there, just kind of, in the down inches below the surface that are available. And now we're seeing things like the evidence of methane. Methane you could tie to organic activity. So a lot of people are wondering, are there really things living just, a few feet below the surface of Mars? And we'd like to go there and find out.
Well, I didn't think it was possible, but Joe, you turned me into a space geek. I am fascinated now by
Nice work.
by all of the details.
My work here is done.
Yeah, really, it's going to be a space show next time I'm on.
Yeah.
Let's get Kurt from Oswego, Illinois, who's calling us to ask Joe a question about Pluto.
Hi, how you doing, Joe?
Good. How are things in Wisconsin?
Illinois. Wisconsin's a little further north. Is there any collision avoidance on the spacecraft, or if it comes, can it get out of the way of something if it's going to be in like an asteroid belt or?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I mentioned earlier that we knew that Pluto had about 4 or 5 of these little moons besides the big one, Charon. And there was a fear, because we can't see all that well out there, that there might be some other little things that, we were coming in at like 31,000 miles an hour. So if you hit something even the size of a pea, it would have been a bad day for the spacecraft.
Wow. Wow,
yeah.
really?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Probably would have been all
That's
over.
remarkable.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is, all we could do was aim for where we thought there wasn't anything, and it takes 9 hours round trip for signals, 4.5 hours one way. So there isn't anything you can do real time. And so we just had the spacecraft pointed in the best direction we thought that it would get through clean.
Wow. Ooh,
and
what are the chances?
Dude,
yeah,
that's insane when you think about it.
It was a nervous time, I can tell you. The other day out at APL, we were all waiting for it to phone home, and that was obviously hours after, something like 12 hours after it had actually done the flyby. And just sitting there, everybody was on pins and needles waiting to hear, does it really call home, and is everything okay? We made it through.
All right. Joe
That's
Cassidy,
so cool.
Executive Director of Space at Aerojet Rocketdyne. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
I thought this conversation was really out there.
Well, thanks.
Back in a moment after this.
This is the Bill Press Show. Like the taste of...
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
would you like a bag?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
Sarah McBride joining us next to discuss Caitlyn Jenner, who received, of course, the ESPY's Arthur Ashe Courage Award on Wednesday. What it all means, that's next on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The hardest moments for me is when I'm laying awake in the middle of the night and I'm thinking about all the times I made a pitcher of Kool-Aid with the water, or I boiled a pot of corn or potatoes with the water. Those thoughts just stick with me in the middle of the night, and I feel horrible as a mom that I didn't know that something was wrong, but how could I have known? There's no way I would have known.
The spill at Dan River happened when a drainage pipe that ran underneath an ash basin and dam collapsed, sucking out 6 decades of waste and spewing gunk directly into the river.
My husband and I just kind of looked at each other like, should we be concerned? We live right next to an ash pond, and this was coal ash spilling into the Dan River, and we learned at that point all of the toxins that were included in coal ash.
A situation like Dan River, where there was a catastrophic disaster, gets people's attention, but the fact is that these coal ash pits have been leaking and poisoning people's groundwater and the state's surface waters for decades. Coal ash is the residue left behind after coal is burned in a coal-fired power plant. A large coal-fired power plant can burn 10 million tons of coal a year. When the organic matter in the coal is burned away, what's left behind are these trace minerals, things like arsenic, lead, mercury, selenium, and chromium. And these are highly concentrated. The coal ash can have concentrations of these contaminants that are 10 to 100 times greater than the level in the coals themselves.
Coal ash pond number 1 is right behind my house, literally pretty much in my backyard. We were approached by a neighbor who was wanting to have their well tested, and we decided that maybe we should have ours tested as well. They found hexavalent chromium at 4.5 parts per billion.
So in talking to the residents, we have discovered anecdotal evidence of an extraordinary number of cancers for this fairly small community.
Some of us in the community got together. We started kind of talking about all the cancer that we've seen in some of our family friends in this community. I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of around 70 names. So we had some help from our river keepers putting a map together, and it was a little shocking to see it. You know, I still have a hard time looking at it.
Technically, EPA has not regulated coal ash as a hazardous waste, but it is undeniable that coal ash contains many, many hazardous substances that are hazardous, in fact, to people and the environment. And the only reason they have not been regulated as such is because of intense lobbying efforts by the coal industry and its allies.
A lot of these chemicals are simple elements, but when you find them at the levels that they exist in around coal ash ponds, then you're starting to talk about cancer, brain tumors, you're talking about birth defects, developmental problems, neurotoxicity.
we began to look at legal options, cases that we could bring in court to protect communities and their citizens from these toxic leaking time bombs. In 2002, North Carolina enacted a public financing mechanism for judicial elections. This kept private money out of judicial elections.
The repeal of the public financing program in judicial elections in North Carolina creates a dangerous precedent for all, and it gives corporate polluters and other special interests the opportunity to elect the judges that they want. And this is important for us all. Everyone should care about this, because when you think about the fact that the state and the federal government have basically abdicated their responsibility to regulate these issues, the state courts are the last stopgap.
I think this is no longer a problem that's going to go under the radar. It has been exposed, and I am confident that we will ultimately, with the facts, win out and ensure that we have protected waterways.
And so this is something that we all should care about. If we're worried about the water we drink and the air we breathe, we have to be concerned about money in judicial elections.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
That's right, The Bill Press Show, Hour 3 for this Friday, July 17th, 2015. Thank you so much for joining us. So good to have you with us. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. If you want to be part of the conversation, we do want to hear from you. We're also on Twitter, @BP Show. I'm at Igor Volsky. You can watch us on YouTube /TawkrTV. You can hear us on your favorite progressive radio station all across the country, and of course on those radio apps, iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn app, using the Progressive Voices channel. We're everywhere, doing everything with
and you're periscoping during the breaks.
Of course, and I'm periscoping for the first time in Bill Press show history. We're periscoping here live, the show behind the scenes. You can see it all. You just got to go to Periscope at Igor Volsky. It's a great shot of me the whole time since I can't move the phone. So, So, Cyprian, who runs our cameras here for the YouTube, only I think keeps it focused on Peter the whole time, so nobody really sees
Bad
me.
idea.
But this is an alternative. So Cyprian's running the cameras. Peter here with me in studio.
That faceless voice that you hear on Periscope shouting curse words is definitely not me.
No. Elisa Murphy running the board. Hey. And Sarah Dietrich taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. And we're joined in studio by Sarah McBride, Research Associate for LGBT Progress over at the Center for American Progress, my colleague at CAP. Sarah, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
We are going to get into a conversation about Caitlyn Jenner, who had a very big week, very big Wednesday night. But first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Remember David Sweat? David Sweat was one half of that prison duo that escaped
yes, of
from
course.
New York.
Of
Remember,
course.
it had all of our attention there for a couple weeks while they were on the run. We know David Sweat was shot and captured alive. He was taken to the hospital where he was recovering from his injuries, and we found out yesterday that he has been moved to the 5 Points Correctional Facility's solitary confinement wing.
And it all comes to an end.
Womp, womp. Yeah, getting hit with a big dose of reality. They say he's going to be spending 23 hours a day inside of his cell. Going to be
That
tough
is rough.
to run
That is
from that.
No, you
Yep.
can't. But he's been talking a lot to the authorities, so he might get a deal.
Oh, he was singing like a bird.
Yeah.
He ain't going to get a deal.
No? No. Maybe 22 hours? What do you think? I'll take it. If I was facing 23, that extra hour.
The 23 hours might be the deal. It might have been 24
All right,
hours. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
But you know, with that El Chapo second escape, he might have some hope. You never know.
El Chapo, this guy.
that was something. That put this guy to shame.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Absolutely. You know, science is so wonderful, not only because of all the great things it's brought us, like the Pluto discovery, the flyby we just talked about, but here's the latest big reason that I love science. Science has discovered a brand new strain of seaweed that tastes like bacon.
Delicious.
No way.
Is it healthier?
It is, actually. They say it's as healthy as kale because it is still a green vegetable, but they say that it is a strain, it's a type of dulse, which is a common sea vegetable popular in Asian cooking because of its high protein content and umami flavor.
Game changer.
So, high in protein, it's a vegetable, and it tastes like bacon.
This is amazing.
This is the first time I've ever wanted a seaweed salad.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
like,
that
I
is
totally
incredible.
want this. I could be a vegetarian now.
Delicious.
I could just eat bowls of this, right? Like, I
Wow.
could totally do this.
Wow.
And just an update, yesterday we reported on George H.W. Bush. He took a fall and broke a bone in his neck.
That's right.
He is doing fine. They put out several statements yesterday, said he is already out of bed. Doctor says it's going to take about 4 months to heal, but he's up and he's walking. It was never a big issue for him, just a little painful, but he's doing just fine. He's 91 years old and plans on sticking around for quite some more.
So good to hear that.
Yeah. Good news.
Our very best to President George H.W. Bush, and a relief for his family, I'm sure, because he's been hospitalized quite a lot recently.
Yeah, he has.
Switching gears now with Sarah McBride, Research Associate for LGBT Progress over at the Center for American Progress. There was a lot of talk about this. There's a lot of anticipation. This was going to be the first kind of big event that Caitlyn Jenner participated in as now after following the transition. And here she is at the ESPYs Award. ESPYs. See, this is how much sports I watch.
Yeah, boy.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, the ESPYs Awards. She received the Arthur Ashe Courage Award on Wednesday night and delivered an emotional speech lasting about 8 minutes. The highlight of the night, gave that network astronomical ratings, 7.7 million viewers. That's 250% more than last year. Of course, they also moved to ABC, so that gave a bump. And 1.2 million tweets about the award show. Here is some of what Jenner had to say.
If you want to call me names, make jokes, doubt my intentions, go ahead. Because the reality is, I can take it. But for the thousands of kids out there coming to terms with being true to who they are, they shouldn't have to take it.
That's a really powerful statement. I think in years to come, we'll look back at that statement and be like, this was a really big moment in this movement, because it's a thing that a lot of people, especially in the sports world, don't necessarily understand. They haven't seen, they haven't dealt with. And when you hear someone put it like that, it really rings true.
This award was in some ways controversial. You had criticism of why is she receiving it, but she said her message to America was that trans people deserve your respect.
Trans people deserve something vital. They deserve your respect.
Sarah, there's been a lot of criticism, or some measure of criticism, in the trans community of Caitlyn, that here we have a privileged white woman who has a lot of money from everything that she's done over the years, who's able to kind of, isolate herself from a lot of the pressures and troubles and violence that trans people face. And she made it really a point to talk about the trans people of color who are receive even more discrimination. That was really the centerpiece of her speech. What did you make of the address in general and that theme specifically?
Well, I think first off, whether we want to call it courage, whether we want to call it bravery, when anyone stands up, particularly publicly, to say who they are and live true to themselves, I think that's a cause for celebration, because I think it gives hope to millions of people across this country, whether they're transgender or not, that they too can live complete and authentic lives. I think that the criticism that a lot of people have of Caitlyn Jenner's story, I think is less of a criticism of Caitlyn Jenner and more of a criticism of the media, that the media has not been, no offense, that the media hasn't been addressing transgender issues to the degree that they should prior to Caitlyn Jenner. But I think that's sort of beside the point. I think that Caitlyn Jenner has done an incredible job, as you've said, I think from the start, from the Diane Sawyer interview on, of lifting up transgender stories and transgender voices beyond hers. There's a saying that folks say that when you've met one transgender person, that means you've met one transgender person. And I think Caitlyn Jenner has very, very authentically and compassionately presented the stories that don't look like hers, the stories of violence, the stories of rejection, the stories of suicide that are all too common for transgender people.
Before the Diane Sawyer interview, or even after the Diane Sawyer interview, was there maybe fear's not the right word, or was there concern in the transgender community that how is she going to handle this? Is she going to address these issues? I mean, it feels to me like she's working with some advocates to kind of craft and shape her message, which is great. But given her background of reality television, of kind of the more gossipy side of the news, was there fear that she maybe wasn't going to handle this responsibly?
I think there was certainly that fear. And I think that anytime someone new comes out, we all sort of, every transgender person sort of braces for impact, to use sort of the previous guest's language. And we...
Wow, nice.
Wow.
Nice. Respect.
And so I think we're very fearful about the backlash that occurs sometimes when someone so publicly comes out. I think we're worried about the misperception that this person's story is everyone's story. But I think, as you said, I think Caitlyn Jenner has been working with a lot of wonderful advocates who have helped her lift up other stories, helped her speak about an issue that to a large degree is brand new for her. And I think she's done it in a way that's accessible for the general population while still bringing the transgender community along with her. And I think every step people have been concerned that what she's going to say and how it's going to be handled by the media is going to be sensationalized and scandalous. And I think every single time the community has been pleasantly surprised that it's been done in a compassionate way.
I have to say, knowing the family that Bruce Jenner is a part of, the Kardashian family, right? Part of me, I think, to have the same feelings of good for her for coming out, and good for her for doing this, but at the same time, I hope that this doesn't turn into like a media circus Kardashian thing because of the nature of the show, and the family. But when you listen to what she said at the ESPYs, it was so pure. And so it rang so true to me. It came through crystal clear.
Well, and I think that's very true. And I think as sort of superficial as the praise and obsession with the Kardashian family is in our society, and I count myself as someone who watches Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It also presented a really wonderful opportunity that it was a family that we are all familiar with, because having that family model the type of behavior we want to see from families across this country, behavior of love and acceptance and embrace, I think is going to provide a pathway forward for a lot of families that are currently struggling with accepting their transgender parent or their transgender child right now. That's the type of behavior we need modeled across the country. And as much as, you know, everyone raised concerns and rolled their eyes at this being the Kardashians, I think it's almost a perfect situation that it was a family that we're all familiar with.
That's a really good point.
Did it surprise you, or has the media response to this surprised you, in the sense that, you know, Laverne Cox is also a big advocate and a big spokesperson, is using her celebrity to talk about these issues and some of the issues that Jenner touched on in terms of disparities and violence and all of that. But this even feels to me something that's on a higher level, that she's getting much more attention than Laverne Cox. Some of it good, some of it bad. I think generally the mainstream attention has been positive for the most part. What do you make of the media coverage of all of this? Certainly you had, so the ESPYs on Wednesday, and then later this month, you're going to have the premiere of her show, her show, following, I guess, her life. What do you make of how it has all rolled out?
I think this is the first time in my experience since coming out as transgender 3 years ago where I have pretty universally been impressed with how the media has handled this. Again, I thought the Diane Sawyer interview was really fantastic. I have to say, the 2-part special on Keeping Up with the Kardashians was phenomenal. I mean, it was probably the most heartfelt of all three of the
I believe that.
television shows that we've seen so far, from Diane Sawyer to the ESPYs. It was really well done, very authentic. The family very clearly was struggling with this, and I think that that's a reality. When I came out, my parents at first felt like they were losing me. And we saw that reflected in the Kardashians' responses, and that was very real. And people need to see that and understand that their feelings, if they're feeling that, are understandable, but that a better day will come and you'll realize that you're not losing your family member.
And of course, Caitlyn had her mother there at the ESPYs and gave her a big shout out in her speech, how happy she was that she was able to make it. There is, though, I think this concern from some corners that there's something exploitative about doing this in such a public way with cameras all around you. There are numbers out there that Caitlyn Jenner is making, $200-300 million from all of these different deals that she has, all the products that she's now going to be associated with, that in some ways, she is kind of profiting from this. What would you say to that kind of criticism?
I think there is genuinely almost no wrong way to come out and transition, and no wrong way to tell your story. And I think at the end of the day, if I were Caitlyn Jenner, I would think about this from the standpoint of, I'm going to get all this attention no matter what I do. And so the best thing to do is to provide as much access as possible so that I can tell my story with my own words and have people see me in a way where I have some degree of control over that story and how it's being presented. And so, whether there's profit involved with it or not, I don't know. And frankly, to some degree, that exists in media in general. And I don't think Caitlyn Jenner should be uniquely singled out for making money off of television. But at the end of the day, I think it's a responsible decision to say, this is going to be talked about. And for my sake, and frankly, for the sake of transgender people across the country, I want to have some control over this.
Sarah McBride, Research Associate for LGBT Progress over at the Center for American Progress. If you want to be part of the conversation, give us a call, 866-557-7377, 866-55-PRESS, as we continue talking about Caitlyn Jenner here on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour as we continue here on the Bill Press Show on the Igor Volsky of Think Progress. Hosting for Bill Press, we're joined in studio by Sarah McBride, Research Associate for LGBT Progress over at the Center for American Progress, my colleague. Sarah, we had other big news, and not just from Caitlyn on the transgender front, but also the military announcing that it's going to be revisiting and ultimately, after a 6-month period, lifting the ban against transgender service members. That seems to me like a big accomplishment.
That's a very big step. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, it repealed the ban just for lesbian, gay, and bisexual service members. And that the ban on transgender service members still existed. And the reality is there are roughly 15,000 transgender people currently actively serving in the U.S. military, whether it's on active duty or in the reserves. And and veterans are twice as likely to be transgender than the general population. And so this is a very real and big issue for our community, given that type of involvement in the military. And it's wonderful that America's largest employer is removing a discriminatory ban.
Now, they're changing a regulation because Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a law passed by Congress.
Correct.
This is just a regulation.
Which is why it was separate.
Which is why it was separate. Yeah. Why they're doing it internally. It's a review, and then after 6 months, theoretically,
voila,
it's going away.
Yeah. And the people who are currently serving will be able to do so without fear. And the people who want to serve, who are already out, can do it without fear as well.
A good day for America.
Very good day.
A good day for us all. Sarah McBride, Research Associate for LGBT Progress. Thank you for being with us. You stay with us too, because we'll be back right after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming,
and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes.
Can't take that away from us.
After the hour, the most valuable show, made ever so valuable by our next guest, as we move into the final half hour of what has been a truly exciting Friday edition of the Bill Press Show for this July 17th,
Are you still
2015.
periscoping?
I am still periscoping because I want to make sure that people have options and that people can see us on the latest and greatest technology. I mean, I know you guys are using like YouTube or whatever over here, but listen.
I'm just thinking back to some of the things I said during the break.
Oh, what
and
did
the
you
fact
say?
that they went out on Periscope.
Oh, well, yeah, people now know.
Yeah.
People now
I think I was all nice,
know.
right?
You were okay.
Was I okay?
You were okay, yeah. Believe me, you're a lot worse when the camera's turned on. Only I know. All right, Erica Hellerstein joins me now. She's the investigative reporter for Think Progress, a good colleague of mine. We sit just a couple of desks away. Don't have the opportunity to work together much, but in the future, I see great collaboration.
Yes.
And if you navigate over to Think Progress, our top story is titled The Appalling True Story of What Happened at a Texas Frat When They Thought No One Was Watching. And it's a story of Derek Elred, who was at the University of North Texas. He was a commuter student, a transfer student, and he decided to pledge for a frat, as so many college students do. He liked the guys, felt very welcome, thought that he really found a new home for himself. And he went there for pledge week during the whole initiation process. And, well, something very cruel happened. And it led to a whole series of events that is detailed in Erica's excellent piece. And I'll let you take it from here. What happened as he was being initiated into Sigma Phi Epsilon?
Yeah, so you summarized it up top really well. He was really feeling excited about finding this new social community and this new outlet. So the day that he got his bid for the fraternity was a Saturday, and it was like when he was telling me about it, it was a really exciting morning. And after that, him and the other pledges went to the fraternity house in Texas, and they were hanging out for a little bit. This is Derek's account, but then we also were able to get a police report of the incident, and they sort of were ushered into a room, and at this point were told by, or screamed at, according to Derek, by the fraternity president and a couple other members to do push-ups, actually elbow push-ups. I didn't know what those were before. You can look them up. And
we'll do them during the break.
Yeah, exactly. And also drink.
Periscope that.
Periscope that, that's right.
And drink straight vodka. And Derek, who he had been diagnosed in 2005 with a medical condition that he wanted to remain undisclosed, but impacted his nervous system, started to feel just really overwhelmed, and like he couldn't keep doing these push-ups that he said they were made to do for like half an hour, and didn't want to drink. So he got up and he left, really upset, feeling like he was lied to. He had already asked folks in the fraternity if there would be any sort of hazing, and they said no. So when he left, he called 911 as he was sort of running down the stairs to get out of there. And a university police officer came to the scene and interviewed him, and also interviewed the fraternity president and some of the other people there. And after that, he went to the police station to give a written statement about what happened and left the fraternity house. But what we actually found was the dash cam video from that interaction between the police and the fraternity president. And that was sort of what got us started on the investigation, because in the video, which we feature pretty prominently in the post, and you can link to it and see it. We also have a transcript because the audio is a little hard to understand at times. The fraternity president is asked by the police officer, were you engaging in any sort of hazing, or were you making them drink? And he says no, and then just sort of follows by saying, but honestly, like, we didn't, and I'm quoting him here, we didn't want him here because we thought he was maybe kind of a homosexual. And then sort of just goes on for a few minutes about how they were questioning his sexuality and thought he was, again, in his words, on the weird side of heterosexual.
On the weird side of heterosexual.
Jeez, wow.
And he says, the fraternity president says, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You understand. You sympathize with me.
And the officer actually is kind of, some of us were saying, like, the unsung hero of the video, because he's just like, no, I don't understand what you mean, and I don't believe anything you're saying. So it was good to see his response. But so, yeah, that's all on video. And that sort of started this like spiral of events. That's not even kind of the most upsetting part of the whole story.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So after that, after this whole incident took place and Derek gave his police statement, he left the police station that afternoon. And right as he was leaving, started to get text messages from people in the fraternity saying, you can't come back, return your turquoise SIGEP shirt that he really liked and was happy to have.
It's a good color. Right?
It was a really nice color. And, we have to cease and desist all communication, put your shirt back in the mailbox. And a few days later, he got a text message from and we were able to corroborate all of this. We had the text messages. We looked over all of this. So everything I'm saying is backed up by some type of evidence or record. And so a few days later, the fraternity president sends him this text message that says, you are no longer a member of this fraternity. You have a misinterpretation of what hazing is, and please do not.
Because it's not a half hour of push-ups and drinking vodka out of the bottle. That's not hazing.
No, it's just
that is
a brotherhood event.
Fun, yeah.
And actually, in the police statement, which we also have in our post, if you want to, or the police report, which we have in our post, if you want to read it, you can sort of hear and read Randall's, which is the president, Richard Randall, his side of the story, in which he says it was just a time of inspirational speeches.
Oh, yeah.
And a brotherhood event.
Vodka inspires anyone. I truly do believe that.
Yeah.
It's a different show, though. So, and this is where things really get hairy. So he's basically pushed out of the frat because all of this transpired and the police got involved. The university, which is, of course, the University of North Texas, puts a ban on the frat for some time, so they're kind of shut down.
Right.
And now it's up to the National Fraternity Organization to kind of deal with the situation.
Sure.
And turns out they didn't handle that so well.
No, I think this is actually where the heart of the story really is. Yes, the video is really disturbing to watch and to hear that 20-some-odd-year-old frat member would say that on camera to a policeman is definitely jarring to see. But the Nationals' response here, I think, is really, the most important thing, because they could have handled it and handled sort of the crisis communication much better, and they didn't. So he's kicked out. However, the university, like you say, they do conduct an investigation, and they determine that what took place there was hazing. So there's really no question about that. People can debate how intense they think it was, but the university said, you know what, this was hazing.
We're not standing for it. Yeah.
This chapter is on probation now for 2 years. To our knowledge, the national chapter, and I actually heard this through a conversation I had with the president when I reached out to him for a comment, sort of slapped him on the wrist and said, we read the police report, we heard what you said, and in his words, that's not cool, man. Like, don't do it again.
And that's it. So he wasn't. So the president stepped down from his presidency, but he wasn't removed from the frat, as far as we know.
Right.
He was still part of the frat. The frat didn't take any kind of real disciplinary action for what was going on there, even though they themselves said and told you, that's in the piece, that they don't approve of hazing, discrimination of this kind of gay people or race or anything else is unacceptable. But they didn't do anything.
Right. And those things are actually in their statutes. I looked them up. So they have a non-discrimination clause. They have a whole series of guidelines about what hazing is. This incident violated numerous guidelines. So, but yes, the president, the fraternity president, to his credit, he stepped down. Don't know how that happened, or, if they told him he had to, or if he kind of did it voluntarily. I wasn't able to get that. But I did ask the fraternity, the national chapter, what happened next? And that's when things got really hairy. And so they told me they actually, weren't, in their words, made aware of the video or didn't see this video until this March 2015, which just seems to directly contrast of the conversation that I had with the fraternity president, where he says, they kind of were mad at me and said, don't do this.
And we know they got the report earlier.
Right.
They requested the report earlier, so they knew something was up. And the fact that they didn't tell you if they did anything, if there was any disciplinary action at all, suggests what? That they probably didn't. And this is part of a larger pattern, I think. You Google hazing. You Google hazing in frats, and you get a whole list of deaths that occur because of this kind of practice. And it's so widespread. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. It's part of a larger problem. This incident exemplifies what's still in 2015 still going on in Greek culture. Kids dying from drinking an entire bottle of vodka. Parents suing those schools and trying to get some kind of justice. Stay with us here on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
This is the Bill Press Show.
48 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show continues with investigative reporter at Think Progress, Erica Hellerstein, and her latest piece at the front page of thinkprogress.org, the appalling true story of what happened at a Texas frat when they thought no one was watching. Hazing occurred, and the frat, the national frat, swept it under the rug, gave the president of that fraternity kind of a slap on the wrist, and then went on to threaten the pledgee, Derek Elrod, who spoke out against it and told him, hey, you're talking about this on your social media? Take those pictures down because they make our frat look bad. Now, Erica, this isn't an isolated incident. You Google fraternities and hazing, as I did last night, and you have a whole host of stories about folks dying from over drinking, over exhaustion, hiking for miles and miles and miles. The California State University is being sued for hazing, the death that occurred in 2014. Boston University is being sued. University of Albany is being sued. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The Huffington Post estimates that there's been at least 65 cases reported to the news media of hazing just this year. It's a big problem that still exists in colleges and universities in frat culture, and there's an entire website called totalfratmove.com that I guess kind of glorifies this kind of behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing that Derek, who is a student who was hazed and spoke out about, like you said, and then was subsequently like threatened by the national chapter. One thing he noted actually while we were talking about this was like, you know, we're going to get or you and probably, I will as well, get a fair amount of pushback for this piece because people will be like, hey, that's so wimpy. Like just a couple push-ups and some vodka. Like, so sort of what that signifies is this he was telling me, like a very pro-hazing culture that exists, maybe not in every fraternity, of course, but in the broader like cultural framework of fraternities. And he said, all you have to do is go to this website, totalfratmove.com, to kind of get a sense of the glorification of hazing. And so when that culture exists and, hazing is sort of thought of as just like a necessary evil, and I paid my dues, like you should as well, don't complain about it. I think that's when things can get like really hairy, and when you can see these major rifts between people who perceive what happened to them as hazing, and then other people who say, whatever, just don't be a wimp.
And to me, there's really strong parallels between this macho, masculine culture and a lot of the rape that we see on campus, the sexual abuse and sexual assault that I think comes out of those kinds of environments, or at least cultures, traditions, behaviors, attitudes that say, wow, we're so macho, we're such big men, and devalue women in relation to that. And I think that in your piece, the president or former president of the frat has a tweet that he thinks the folks at his college take shots of estrogen in the morning because they shut down his frat and don't understand that this kind of behavior is just what men do, I guess.
Yeah. I agree that these become not all, but certainly many of them become like these breeding grounds for this type of behavior. And with the campus sexual assault issue and also the hazing issue, they're both gray, these just very gray areas where it's like a he said versus she said thing. And a lot of times at colleges, I think the university in this particular case of North Texas kind of conducted itself appropriately. They did actually go through the investigation and determine it was hazing. They put the chapter on probation. Yeah, it wasn't a lot that they did, but they did something. A lot of these cases, you see nothing being done by the university because the fraternities are very closely aligned with the universities as well, and they have these very tight relationships.
But it seems to me like that's almost too late. It's good that you put them on probation, but that's after the incident.
Right.
And I think the broader question is, how do you prevent this from happening in the first place? Because maybe if you prevent or limit or reform Greek life in some way, you'll have a correlation where the rape culture that exists on campus, where the devaluing of women that exists on campus also plummets. Because I think one thing really fits into the other. They're really kind of interconnected. And that's a side of the story, even though thankfully as a society we're addressing rape culture or beginning to, we're not looking at the frats, we're not looking at the hazing, and it's a big, big problem. Erica Hellerstein, investigative reporter for Think Progress, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me
with us. A real pleasure. We'll continue on the Bill Press Show, our final moments, closing it all up, what it all means, the week we had. Stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Oh, I think we said it all on the Bill Press Show in this week in review, hitting all the top stories that animated the week that was, looking ahead, of course, to next week. And I suspect, Peter, that we already saw as we're doing the show here on the 3 TVs, Republican presidential nominee after Republican presidential nominee weighing in on that tragic shooting in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I believe the conversation will be about arming military bases.
Yep, that's what it's going to be. We're not going to have any conversations about gun control or keeping guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have guns. It'll be about more guns.
Be about more guns in more places with more violence. That's what we're going to hear. But hey, listen, the good news is you can always tune in here, the Bill Press Show, to get all that spin unspun like only Bill can do, and he'll be back on Monday to break it all down. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress. Thanks for watching and listening, and have a great, restful, peaceful weekend.
This is the Bill Press Show.